I'm about to sing. Y'all ready? Okay, y'all know this one, I promise. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Oh, what? You didn't clap? Well, maybe you're in Canada because that's what our next interview is about. Apparently, we used to be ranked higher, but now we're 18th on the list of happiness. You might have heard this come out this week in the news. This is according to the World Happiness Report, published every year by the Wellbeing Research Centre at the University of Oxford. So Canada has dropped 3 spots to get to that number 18th place I mentioned. It is the lowest ever position since polling began 2 decades ago. So to talk about why this might be the case, Jennifer Moss joins us via Zoom, wellbeing expert and author of Why Are We Here? Creating a Work Culture Everyone Wants. And I love that you've shown up in a happy yellow blazer.
I feel like it really does make a difference when I'm waking up at 5:30. If I put on a yellow blazer, everything's better.
It kind of matches the happy topic. What do you make of the fact that we dropped 3 places in this global ranking and what might be going on there?
Well, I like to just put this little caveat in here that we still are in the top 20. And so comparatively, we're still a relatively happy country. But there has been this downward trend that we're seeing, and this is across all Western countries. We're seeing people's sense of, life evaluation really has dropped. And that's a sense of whether they're living their best life or their worst life. So people are starting to feel more like they're not living their best life. And, we're also seeing this growing unhappiness amongst our youth. We're losing our sense of freedom, feeling like we're able to live the life that we want. Also, we're declining our trust in institutions, and that's has a significant impact on our happiness. And then, the loneliness, the economic uncertainty, and just other factors at play right now in this time of polycrisis has definitely been a part that's dragging us all down.
Is that how they defined it for this report, against asking people questions about what you've just been mentioning, the different, measures we might have?
I find that the way that they measure is so fascinating because it isn't just, how are you happy? They really like to make it so it's not such a loaded word. And that's by asking really based on this measure, and it's called the Cantrell ladder. And people are asked to imagine a ladder, and 0 is their worst life, 10 is their best life. So they're sort of creating a range of where they're feeling in that moment. But then it's not just momentary happiness. It's asking things like, how often are you laughing in the last week? How often are you worrying? And those types of questions. And then, it really gets to the sense of life satisfaction. And that's what happiness really is, are you satisfied with your life? It's not these sort of big sweeping emotions. It's just, do I feel pretty content in the life that I have?
The Nordic countries, people might know this, are consistently at the top of this list, and this year's no exception. So Finland's been number 1 for 8 years in a row. What might we learn from them?
Finland keeps crushing it in this competitive, kind of competition of who's happiest, which countries are happiness. And there's a good reason for it. I was actually on the World Happiness Council. I contributed to these reports. And what I thought was a really, a fascinating learning when I was doing this work was that these Nordic countries have a lot of different options for their political groups. There's like 10 or 11 different political groups. And so when you elect a leader, it really is what, the country needs in this moment. And they make those choices and feel really like there's a lot of trust in their institutions. And that has a big impact on our happiness. There's also something around the social fabric. They really trust each other. And when it comes to happiness, that trust in each other, the social connection is really important. And it doesn't even need to be real. It's really about perception. So Canada, for example, they asked this question I love. If you lost your wallet, do you perceive that someone will return it to you? And what Canadians feel right now, despite the fact that since 2019, our pro-social behaviors have jumped by 10 points, we are believing that people won't return our wallet. We don't have this perception that people are pro-social here. And yet in these countries, these Nordic countries, there's a high perception that their wallet will be returned. And it's therefore correlated to their increased happiness.
That's so interesting. I love that question. I was going to say 50-50, so maybe that reflects something. What are the policies Canada could actually consider to help boost happiness?
It really is about investing in policies that focus on relationships, not just infrastructure. I mean, when you look at things like eating alone has increased significantly in Western countries. It's like almost 50% increase in this eating by ourselves. And yet there's this Cornell study, that I include in the book, which I found really interesting. By eating with a coworker, even 20 minutes once per week can increase well-being and life satisfaction. It's just 20 minutes, but the pandemic made this social behavior really atrophy, and we need to get that muscle back. We need to boost that. So we need policies that really encourage just the reduction in loneliness, the increase in mental health policies, support for multi-generational housing. When you look at countries like Latin America, for example, they have a high level of multi-generational housing. And the more you live with your family, even though in the Western world, we think that's maybe not going to increase our happiness. It really does increase people's happiness. So that kind of investment in policy is really critical.
Before you go this morning, I mean, obviously people might be thinking at the individual level, then what can they do as well? I mean, you have something called maybe follow the 1950s grandma rule.
Yes. You know what? This is what we need to go back to. All those idioms like, be kind to strangers, don't judge a book by its cover. It seems like it's familiar, but right now it's pretty novel. We're not just engaging in small acts of kindness, and happiness is a social contagion. There's a network effect to happiness. So when you are impacting someone's happiness, it actually increases their happiness, and then that spreads. You're more likely to say, in line buy a cup of coffee for the person behind you if someone had bought it for you. I mean, these create these real boosts. And then over time, what happens is we create happier communities. We believe that people will return our wallet. And then over time, that actually impacts an entire country, which then moves us back up those rankings, which I think all of us want to see in next year's report.
It's so interesting. I know that, I feel like, as you started by saying, COVID in many ways broke us. But people are in this moment where they're ready to let it go, I think. And it's interesting because we have an election now here in this country. But there's been so much focus on differences and ideological differences. And I always think to myself, we always had all these different differences. But COVID made people sort of put it out there, and everybody was online, and we shared something that was at stake, this shared, unknown coming at us. And we didn't really fully come out of that. I'm hearing that we've been traveling to different communities and different, towns, cities across Manitoba, and we're hearing that from a lot of people, but a lot of people are saying, okay, let's put this divisiveness somewhere else and figure out how to move forward. And in this case, as Manitobans. So really good conversation.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll have to do an experiment and drop our wallets and see what happens.
I think that would be an amazing social experiment. And I feel like we're going to feel really good when all of them come back to us.
Gosh, I hope so. All right. Thanks a lot, Jennifer. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Jennifer Moss. She's the author of Why Are We Here? Creating a Work Culture That Everyone Wants. Talking today about the Happiness Index. Canada slipping 3 rankings to 18th.